Hello, my name is Doug Boebinger, and I'd like to take a few minutes of your time to talk with you about the recent changes that have occurred on the PMP exam effective January 2nd of 2021. Just a little brief background on myself. I was certified in December of 1994. My certification number is 3504. I've been doing PMP prep ever since. And that began with the pre-version 1 of the PMBOK guide. So I've taught thousands of people around the world project management professional preparation, and I have seen every exam change that PMI has done since 1994. And I can tell you that this exam change is quite significant. My background originally was in construction, but I was also the lead project management consultant to Ford Powertrain Global for 12 years. And as I mentioned, I've taught thousands of people across the world project management fundamentals, advanced project management, and PMP prep. The company that I founded in 1997 is Integrated Process Developers, Inc. We're a worldwide organization preparing organizations to become better, more efficient, and more effective in the work that they do through process improvement, project management implementation, and training. You can learn more about us on our website, www.processdevelopers.com. We're a founding member of the Project Management Training Alliance, PMTA. And PMTA is a global organization that is focused on becoming the gold standard in project management training. IPDI is a certified training provider which recognizes our credentials as being the best in project management training. You can earn PDUs and CEUs through these videos as well as our online webinars and our training courses. You can learn more about PMTA at pmtrainingalliance.org. So as I said, the PMP exam changed on January 2nd of 2021. And the changes are significant for several reasons. And I'll go through these in this video. Prior to the end of 2020, the exam primarily focused on predictive, or what some call waterfall approach to project management, with just a sprinkling of adaptive agile project management in there. Now, approximately half of the questions relate to predictive waterfall project management, and the other half relate to adaptive agile or hybrid project management. Now that itself is a rather significant change because now you need to understand more information about the Agile process, Agile terminology, the Agile ceremonies, and items like that. But keep in mind that there are a lot of aspects of project management that are common across both predictive and Agile, such as approaches to risk management, communications, engaging stakeholders, quality management, procurement, and the like. So there are quite a bit of the areas of project management that don't quote unquote change because of adding adaptive or agile project management into the PMP exam. But it does for people who don't have experience in adaptive agile project management. It does add a significant amount of vocabulary and processes and methodologies that you probably are not overly familiar with. The length of the exam has changed as well. It used to be 200 questions where 175 of them were scored and 25 of them were unscored. And the unscored questions are questions that PMI puts into the exam to vet them, to validate that those questions are good questions for the exam itself. For example, if 90% of the people got it right, it's probably too easy. If 90% of the people got it wrong, it's too difficult. So in the new exam, the questions total is 180. It's still 175 scored questions. They've just reduced the number of unscored questions themselves. And by the way, they don't tell you which questions are unscored, because if they did, then you just skip right over them, and that would defeat the purpose of putting them in. The pace of the exam is a little slower, shall we say. Originally it was 4 hours, 240 minutes. At 200 questions, that averaged out to be about 1.2 minutes per question. Now the total length of the exam is 230 minutes, 3 hours and 50 minutes. And at 180 questions, that now comes out to be about 1.27 minutes per question. So about 1.25 minutes per question. That is still a pretty quick pace to move through 180 questions. It works to your advantage in the fact that PMI cannot formulate such lengthy questions that require you 5, 10, 15 minutes in order to answer. And we can definitely come up with those type of questions with some of the more in-depth aspects of project management. So it does eliminate those very lengthy questions. However, for those of us who don't read at the speed of light, it does take time to work through the paragraph of information that they give you, and then read and analyze the answers to determine which is the best answer for the exam, for the question itself. So it's a pretty quick pace. You do need to practice that and make sure that you understand how swiftly you do have to move through the questions as you progress through the exam. The location of the exam, Pearson VUE has been doing the proctoring of the exam for PMI for the last several years. In the pre-COVID environment, they have locations worldwide where you could schedule an appointment, go in and sit and take the exam at their facility. However, with COVID hitting in March of 2020, PMI moved to the ability to take the exam in the comfort of your home, wearing your bunny slippers if you so desire. However, PMI does have pretty extensive protocols that you need to go through in order to have the exam done in the comfort of your home. And I highly suggest that you go to PMI's website and read through the protocols themselves. I've got a link later on in this presentation, but if you go to pmi.org and click on certifications and PMP certification, there should be a link on that website that goes through all the protocols. For example, you're not allowed to have anything within about 6 feet radius, 2 meter radius of your location. So if you could see my desk with 3 computers and 2 external monitors and 2 iPhones and a calculator and everything else, that would not pass. Everything needs to be clear. They want to make sure that you have no supplemental materials readily available that you can reference during the exam itself. They want to make sure that your camera is on and operating, because someone will be viewing you through your camera. So you want to keep your eyes on the screen. You don't want to be looking away itself, because that might cause them to think that you're looking over at someone who's giving you information or something along those aspects. So they're very rigid and very regimented on how they do this in the COVID environment. Now, post-COVID, hopefully that will come sooner than later. I'm sure the Pearson VUE locations will open up worldwide. I do not know if PMI will continue with the availability of taking the exam in the comfort of your home. Another footnote on that, I've heard from people that it's gone smoothly and everything worked wonderfully taking it at home, but I've also heard some horror stories. So let me just give you some lessons learned about this that I've received from some of my previous students. You want to make sure that you log in as soon as you're allowed to. So you'll have a window as to when your exam will be, and they allow you to log in, I believe, approximately 30 minutes in advance. Please read the email that outlines all of this itself. But you want to log in immediately as soon as you're able to, because if you log in, 15 or 20 minutes in advance, and the proctor has already logged in and does not see you, and you're not logged into the site where you take the exam, they may wait for a short period of time, but they do not wait very long. And if you're not there, then they will cancel the exam and you will have to reschedule it. So if whatever the time frame is, don't quote me on the 30 minutes, but whatever the time frame is, make sure you log in immediately and that you sit there and wait for them to show up, which means any pre-exam preparations that you need to do, i.e. use the facilities, deal with biology, etc., make sure you do that prior to logging in. Which brings me to the next point. 3 hours and 50 minutes is quite a long time to sit and take an exam. So they used to allow a 1 10-minute break, but starting on January 2nd, they have moved to 2 10-minute breaks that do not count against the 3 hours and 50 minutes. So if you take the full 2 10-minute breaks, the total time will become 4 hours and 10 minutes. However, something to note about this, that when you take the break, and the break is optional, but what this in essence does is cause the exam to be 3 separate sections, 3 separate exams. And the breaks don't exactly occur at the 60 question and 100 question point, the 1/3 points. They let you know that you have a break coming up. And the situation with this is that once you take the break, you cannot go back to that previous section to review questions, answer questions that you left blank, etc. So like I said, in essence, this becomes 3 separate exams that are separated by a 10-minute break. So before you take the break, make sure that you've answered all of the questions in that previous section. And do not leave any of them blank. You do not get any point deductions for guessing an incorrect answer. So make sure that you complete all of the questions before you take the break. And then when you take the break, make sure that you come back prior to the 10 minutes. Do not let the 10-minute timer run out before you come back, because the proctor can then use that as a trigger to say that you're taking too much time at your break. Obviously, they don't know what you're doing during the break itself, so that gives you an unfair advantage over others. So make sure, like I say, that you finish the section before you take the 10-minute break, then come back early from the 10-minute break. You can then start the next section and complete that, take the second 10-minute break, again, making sure you complete all of the questions, and then you can complete the third section itself. Back when they were doing, when the exam centers were open in 2020, they were enforcing the 10-minute break at the on-site testing locations. We do not know whether or not they're going to enforce the 2 10-minute breaks once the Pearson VUE locations open up again in the post-COVID environment. So you can stay tuned to IPDI's website or PMI's website for further information about that. Here's the Agile versus Predictive itself is a pretty big exam change, but here's where the exam change gets to be even more fun, shall we say. Back in the previous days, back in 2020 and before, PMI would focus the exam around the 5 process groups of project management, with 31% of the questions coming from the executing process group and 25% coming from monitoring and controlling and 24% coming from planning, with the balance coming from initiating and closing. Now what PMI is doing is that they are focusing the exam across what they call domains. And the 3 domains are people, process, and business environment. So 50% of the questions go against process. And this is the technical aspect of project management. This is looking at creating scope statements and product backlogs, creating work breakdown structures and sprint backlogs, developing network diagrams, estimating resources, determining your quality metrics and quality tools, going through the risk management process, procurement process, et cetera, et cetera. So all of those aspects make up 50% of the exam. 42% of the exam now focuses on people. And PMI is emphasizing the soft skills a lot more now on the exam. And for some people, this is probably an even bigger change to the PMP exam than adding Agile in. My background is in the technical world. I've got 2 engineering degrees. I started in construction. I moved to automotive. And when I took the exam, it was probably 90% technical and 10% people. And for a technically minded person, that's Pavlov's dog. You just start salivating at those questions because 2 + 2 always equals 4, shall we say. But in the people environment, and this is, to me, this is a good change that PMI is making. Project managers need to realize that it's not just about following the plan and what's the next step in the plan and things like that. And whereas that's important, it is equally important to understand people and to be able to effectively lead project teams, to work with people from different cultures and different backgrounds and diversity, to deal with conflict management, learn how to motivate people, inspire people, to lead people. And so with the new exam change, 42% of the questions are looking at that people environment. And now for individuals that have that background and have those leadership skills and come from an HR environment or something along those lines, this actually makes the exam probably a little bit easier because this is right in their forte, whereas the technical is something that they may struggle with. So depending on your background and your personality style and your strengths and weaknesses, this could either be making the exam more difficult or making the exam easier. And then 8% of the exam deals with the business environment. And this is, how does your project connect with the overall organizational strategy? This actually, in my opinion, is new for the exam. They didn't really emphasize this a lot previously. There was a little bit of it, but not to the extent they're talking about now. So PMI is making sure that project managers understand that their projects live in a bigger environment than just the project itself. And you need to understand how your project fits into that overall organizational strategy. And also realize that your project may not be the A1 priority for the organization. And you may have to wait your turn, shall we say, wait your point in the queue in order to get resources and funding and decisions and the like. So they're emphasizing that more on the exam. So 8% of the questions will be looking at that business environment element. The exam layout mirrors the PMI talent triangle. Now, once you become PMP certified, this will become something that you will learn a lot more about. But to become recertified as a PMP, a project management professional, you need to achieve 60 PDUs, professional development units, in 3 different areas. Technical, which relates to the process elements themselves that we were just talking about. And those are the technical aspects of performing your role as a project leader, a project manager, a scrum master, etc. Leadership, which aligns with the people aspects itself. So your ability to guide and motivate and direct others in order to achieve the objectives of the project itself. And then in the strategic and business environment. And that, again, is understanding how your project fits into the overall organization and the organizational goals and objectives. So basically what they've done is they've aligned the PMP exam along the 3 sides of the talent triangle. Once you become PMP certified, as I said, you'll become a lot more familiar with the PMI talent triangle and how many PDUs you need to have as a minimum and how many you're allowed to get as a maximum in each of these 3 areas. And that would probably be a good subject for another video. But first, let's get you certified, and then you can be concerned about how to get recertified. One of the other things that has occurred as of January 2nd, 2021 is that PMI is further emphasizing that the PMP exam is not just solely based on the PMBOK guide. Now, PMI has been saying that for years, I would say decades even. But as I mentioned, I've been doing PMP prep since 1994, and I can tell you that a vast majority of the questions on the exam came straight out of the PMBOK guide. And then the other questions that were on the exam, we would then add into the PMP prep course in order to make sure that we covered all the bases that you potentially would see on the PMP exam. But PMI has now published a list of 10 books that they use as a basis for the PMP exam. Now, to be honest with you, in my opinion, and based on feedback that I get from my associates in the industry, that the exam is still primarily based on the PMBOK guide, 6th edition, as of the recording of this in February of 2021, as well as now the Agile Practice Guide. So if you want to purchase these books and you go to Amazon, make sure you purchase the bundled package of the PMBOK Guide 6th edition with the Agile Guide as well. If you're a PMI member, you can download a PDF of the PMBOK Guide 6th edition and the Agile Practice Guide for free as part of your membership. You cannot print it out and you cannot edit it, but you do get it for free. If you're a person who likes to have paper in order to make notes on and to highlight and things like that, then you probably will need to purchase them. So I have those in obviously a much larger font than the other 8 because it's still my perception, and again those of my associates, that the PMP is still focused primarily on the PMBOK guide and the Agile guide. But this does allow PMI to pull information from these other 8 books. I personally have no plans to purchase these books. I'm not advocating to my students that they purchase these books. Some of these books are several inches thick, so it would be nearly impossible for you to read all of them, and it would be quite an extensive investment in them. But this is PMI's way of saying that we can open the exam up to other topics, other subjects that are not just in the PMBOK guide and the Agile guide. My job as a person who prepares people for taking and successfully passing the PMP exam is to understand what is on that exam and to prepare IPDI's PMP prep course to do just that, to give you the information, teach you the information, teach you the understandings and the perspectives that you need in order to pass the PMP exam. So so based on a lot of information and lessons learned and retrospectives, we're constantly upgrading our PMP prep materials in order to provide that to you. One of the other changes that have occurred since January 2nd, as I mentioned, these changes are probably the most extensive changes that I've seen in the 26 years, shall we say, that I've been preparing people for the PMP exam, is that it's going from the traditional 4-option multiple choice questions, pick the best of the 4 options, to a combination of multiple choice questions. Now, our early feedback is that approximately 75% of the questions are along the traditional multiple choice, 4 possible answers, pick the best answer itself. But they are now approximately 25% of the questions could be where you pick 2 of the 5 answers that are appropriate, or 3 of the 6 answers that are appropriate for that question. You may have to match items. So which of these risk management processes are in the planning process group, are in the monitoring control process group, etc. Which of these steps are from procurement occur in planning, in executing, in monitoring, controlling. You also may have to put things in the appropriate order. So what's the appropriate order to the approach to risk response for threats? What's the appropriate order for risk response to opportunities? What's the order from bottom to top of Maslow's hierarchy of needs? So if you understand project management, and these are things that we've taught since the beginning of teaching PMP, what's the best way to do things? What's the appropriate order to do things in? What's the progression that you need to go through in order to create a good logic duration driven schedule? If you understand the concepts of project management, then putting things in the proper order or matching should not be that much of a hurdle for you. They're also looking at what they call hotspot, which is where they give you various sentences and which of these is the best approach, which of these is a okay approach, which of these would be the wrong approach to dealing with this situation. And they've talked about having some limited fill in the blank, although that may not be in the current exam. But that is a possibility for future exams. The exam is still a pass-fail exam, and they do not indicate what is exactly the pass score required for passing the PMP exam. The way that they do this, they have a exam algorithm where each question is given a point value. For example, difficult questions may have a point value of 1.1, medium level questions may have a point value of 1, and easy questions may have a point value of 0.9. So it's not just exactly how many questions did you get right, but how many points did you earn for the questions that you got right. And PMI does not quote a specific pass score, how many points that you need. But they also have said that the exam is at the same level of difficulty that it has been for the last 10 years or so. And the last time that they quoted a number you needed to get 106 points out of the 175 possible points in order to pass the exam. So we believe that the exam is the same level of difficulty that it was before. It's not made it any more difficult or any less difficult itself. So here's just some fast examples of matching. Put these five, pick 4 of these 5 process elements and match them against the process groups. So which process group applies to which process element? And that requires you to have a little bit deeper understanding than just recognizing the correct answer off of the multiple choice answers themselves. They could also show you graphs. In this case, this is a cumulative cost curve, and ask you, which what point is the spending at the greatest level, or at what point are the risk mitigation kicking in, or something along these lines. So they could ask you to interpret cumulative cost curves, interpret Gantt charts, interpret Pareto diagrams. And again, we've been preparing people for PMP prep and understanding how these charts are created and the analysis of these charts itself. But it is another way to validate your understanding of project management. They could also be showing you things like a risk register in this case, and asking you which risk is the highest priority risk. Which risk would you be more aggressive in your risk response? Which risk would you deal with first? And again, it requires you to analyze the information that's being presented to you. But as I said before, if you have a firm understanding of project management, these new type of exam questions really should not cause you any difficulties. I want to point out that all of these changes are in alignment with the new exam content outline, the ECO. And yes, we like acronyms in project management as well. And the new exam content outline breaks the exam into domains, tasks, and enablers. And those domains are the people domain, the process domain, and the business environment domain. Those are then broken down into tasks that a project manager typically needs to perform within each of those domains, and then enablers, which are examples of the work that needs to be done in order to accomplish each of these tasks. And I put a web link here on the screen, and you can find this again on PMI.org under the certification tab for PMP. And I highly recommend that you download and use the ECO, the exam content outline, as a study guide for preparing for the PMP exam itself. The ECO is available in various languages. So whichever language is your preferred language, the language that you plan to take the exam in, you can download the PDF of that. But it acts very much as a study guide and a validation that you understand PMI's mindset, PMI's approach, the way that PMI views project management. And the PMP course materials that IPDI has put together have been converted into this style so that it's in alignment with the exam content outline and the 3 domains that PMI is using as the basis for the PMP exam. And then here's some additional information that you can get from PMI. PMI has, if you're not overly familiar with Agile and hybrid approach to the project management, PMI has launched an Agile hybrid micro certification that is a self-paced online course that you can go through And then after taking a unproctored exam, you can then receive a micro certification and a PMI credential badge, and that will also facilitate your understanding of Agile Hybrid. There's a PMP exam reference list, as I mentioned, what the course material or what the books are that PMI is referencing for the PMP exam. You can look at that, and there's pretty much everything that I have gone through in this video as far as what the exam changes. But if you're curious about what PMI may do next, it's always a good habit to keep an eye on PMI.org or processdevelopers.com website to see what the latest and greatest information is on the exam updates. And as I mentioned, if you do take the exam in the comfort of your home and your bunny slippers, make sure that you've gone through the protocols, process, and procedures that PMI requires for the online proctored test. And there's FAQs there that you can review. And make sure that you're compliant with those, because if the proctor finds that you're non-compliant, and you'll have to take your computer and do a complete 360 sweep of the room to prove that you've got nothing within arm's reach. If they find that you're non-compliant, then they will require you to reschedule the exam itself. So make sure that you've gone through all the frequently asked questions, the FAQs on those. And then just a plug for our free webinars. IPDI does a free 1-hour webinar once a month on various subjects that relate to project management and leadership skills, and these will allow you to receive 1 PDU. And once you become certified, PDUs are what you will be looking for. So feel free to register for our online webinars on our website, processdevelopers.com, and then click on the monthly webinar link and you can register for those. If you have any questions, you can go to the processdevelopers.com website, click on the Contact Us, and send me questions, and I'll try to respond as swiftly as possible. I want to thank you for your time and encourage you to take and pass the PMP exam, and IPDI stands by ready to aid as best we can to do that. So again, if you have any further questions, feel free to contact me through the company website. You can also connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only Doug Boebinger out there, and I look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thank you, and have a good day.